Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is something called a staggered joint. And what's a joint? Well, a joint is two pieces of drywall coming together. And let me show you what a staggered joint is. So what we have here is we have two pieces of drywall coming together. That's forming our joint. But you never want to have a joint and then a joint right below it. So you want to have a joint up against a solid piece of drywall, and that's what we have here. Now this down here, that's just a pencil mark. It's not a joint at all, okay? Because I marked this stud so we could screw in. This here is an actual joint of two pieces of drywall coming together. So why do you stagger the joint? It has a lot to do with the settling of a house. Maybe you'll get cracks in that joint, and then that way the crack does not go from the ceiling to the floor. Okay, now we're going to start the taping process, and these are the things that you're going to need. You're going to need a mud pan, you're going to need paper tape, or you're going to need the mesh tape. I recommend that you use the paper tape. You're going to need all-purpose joint compound or a hot mix. It's going to be really a personal decision that you make. You have to decide what you're going to feel comfortable working with. I'm going to show you how to mix a hot mix and how to apply it, but you have to remember that a hot mix, it sets up because there's a chemical reaction. Where an all-purpose joint compound such as this, well, it's air dried. That's what controls the drying process, the air, so you've got a lot more time. You also want to have tools of varying size, okay, or varying widths, because when you lay down the tape, you're going to have to expand the area that you're covering with each coat. And it's going to take a minimum of 3 coats. So I'm going to add water, because I'm going to make a hot mix, and the water you want to use a cool water such as this, and then I'm going to add the dry mix to it. You always want to add your dry joint compound, okay, to the water, not the other way around. And the reason for that is you want the water to absorb the material, and you're going to get a nice creamy mix. But if you do it the other way around, where you add the water to the dry joint compound, it's going to be lumpy, not consistent. You're going to have a very difficult time taping. So I've got it mixed up. Took me about a minute, okay? And the one mistake I think that a lot of people make is they add too much water. It doesn't take a lot of water, okay? And you want the consistency to look like thick icing. That's what you're looking for. That's what you want to aim for. So now we're ready to tape. So I'm going to show you how to put on the mesh tape. But we're going to be taping with paper tape, but I want to show you the process. So you lay your tape down right on the seam, okay? And now you just follow it. Follow it down. So this is what you want to be aiming for. The good thing about the mesh tape is it adheres to the surface and makes mudding a lot simpler in terms of coats. Because with paper tape, we're going to have to do a bedding coat. With mesh tape, you don't need to do that. Okay, so it's time to start mudding. And I'm going to lay what's called a bedding coat for my paper tape. I want to take some mud and just put it on the joint. Putting it on the joint. You just basically want to lay it up there. And I like to go sideways because if I go in this fashion, it's going to put too much mud on. But if I go to the side, it's going to put on less. Okay? I'm going to have to lay it down just a little bit now. All right? Just going to lay it down. Okay, so that's my bedding coat. I've got my paper tape here, and I'm just going to lay down in that seam. Start in the corner, I'm going to go across. So I've got my tape over the joint. Now I'm going to lay it down and embed it in the mud. And so what you do is you just take your tool and bring it across. Okay, so we're going to take the broader tool. I'm going to lay a little pressure on the back of the blade and just now a nice, clean, smooth, consistent pressure all the way across the seam. Now here's the next thing. Okay, so that's our first coat. There's going to be a couple more. But now we have to get these screw heads. It just takes a little bit of mud. That's it. But you have to make certain that the screw head is countersunk. Hear that sound? Clinker. So it's coming out too far. That's going to interfere with a good drywall job. So in that case, you take a screwdriver and you just screw it in a little bit so it's buried in the paper a little bit. Okay, I've mixed my second coat of mud, and when you mix up the second batch, you want it to be just a little bit looser. Okay, so the first coat is dry. I want to just knock down a little bit of the high spots. That's what I'm doing here. Just going to run my knife across lightly just to get any kind of dry material that might wind up in the second coat of mud. You don't want that. And of course, mud is joint compound, because you don't want dry material to etch the new joint compound. So I've loaded up my knife with joint compound and I'm going to start laying it down. And ideally what I want is I want the second coat to go beyond the first coat. So I'm just going to get it up there first. I'm going to come back over it as soon as I get it up and smooth it out. Okay, so I've got my mud in place. Now I'm going to lay it down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to apply just a little bit of pressure to the back of the blade as I bring it across. Now you're going to need to just clean up the edges just a little bit. That's what I'm doing. I had a little bit of joint compound drip. Just going to clean that edge up. And then when it comes time to put my third coat on, it's going to go on a lot better. Okay, so it's time to put the second coat on the screw holes. And you just want to, again, just a smooth coat. Not much. It doesn't take much. So what we have here is the dreaded butt joint. Okay? And what that is it's where two pieces of drywall come together and it's not a tapered edge. When you hang drywall, most of the time, you're mudding or putting joint compound on a tapered edge. These are really tricky. And here you want to use paper tape. Okay, so the technique is you take a little bit off your knife, just about that amount, and you want to apply it sideways. Just come on down like so. That's it. Then you want to give it a little bit more mud. Come on down. Now, this once over. Now we're going to apply the paper tape. Okay, so this is paper tape and I want to show you how to cut it. Just a quick way, just a little quick trick. Lay your blade right on the paper tape and you're going to use that as an edge. I mean, really dig into the wall a little bit and then just pull your tape across. Okay, so just lay the paper tape right on that joint. And you're going to want to lay the paper down. In this case, folks, less is more. Less joint compound, the better off you'll be. And that's all you want. That's a good first coat for a butt joint. Okay, so this is set up. I'm going to knock it down a little bit. It's time for our second coat on our butt joint. Just run your knife over, get any dry pieces off. Clean off your tool a little bit. And now we're going to put the second coat on. And again, our second coat's got to come out beyond the first coat. So let's just get the mud up there. So what I did was I put a lot of joint compound on, and did you notice how I had it, like I cleaned it off? And that's what you want to do. You want to clean off the excess. Now I'll just do the once over. That's it. Now for a final coat, I'm going to use an all-purpose joint compound. You don't have to go with the all-purpose joint compound. Actually, you can go with a topping compound. You could just continue to mix dry joint compound. Use a material you feel comfortable with. But I want to show you how nicely the all-purpose joint compound will lay down. Before you scoop it out of the pail, you'll want to mix it. Take a mixing wand, stir up the material. You'll be glad you did. Here's the thing. You can use this for all 3 coats, but because it's air dried, it takes a lot of time between coats. And if you've got a big job, it's no big deal. You might want to go with this. But if you've got a small job and you just want to get it done, you probably want to use a hot mix. I'm putting an all-purpose joint compound on as our 3rd and final coat because I want to show you how easy it is to use. Now the trick with laying the final coat on is you want to lay on as little as possible. It's not going to take a whole lot. Just trying to get some of the imperfections out. And you want to make certain that you span over the 2nd coat. Now you may want to run your knife over the joint. Just make certain that there's no dry particles, because what will happen is you'll get little tracks in the fresh joint compound. So that's what you want to do. And now it's time to lay on the final coat. I'm taking my blade and I'm just going to run it across. And you want to apply some pressure, not a whole lot. You just want to get the excess mud off. And the thing is, you're not putting it on too heavy. Putting it on light, you're just trying to get the imperfections out and let the sandpaper do its job. So I'm giving my screw holes, those heads, the final coat. So you learned how to tape drywall today, and you learned the 1st coat, 2nd coat, 3rd coat. You learned how to apply the mesh tape and the paper tape. And you learned how to do those dreaded butt joints. This is Leah saying, you can do this. See you next time.